Welcome back to the State of Love and Trust. This week we talk with Gregg Deal, singer for the band Dead Pioneers. We have an honest conversation about Native American history through punk rock music. Gregg tells us how he met Jeff Ament and how Dead Pioneers came to open for Pearl Jam. One fan's great awakening, shall we say, and wait till you learn which Pearl Jam song Gregg would love to cover. It's all next with our guest.
I'm Gregg with Dead Pioneers. This is the State of Love and Trust.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The State of Love and Trust. It's a Pearl Jam podcast. I'm one of your two hosts, Jason Kerepesi, and alongside me, as always, is...
Paul Ghiglieri.
That was a bit of a drum roll there. I like that. You like to rev up sometimes. I notice you know, and you're moving, you're really getting after it. You're very excited.
You put 2 pens of power in my hand.
That's almost too much power for a man to wield.
That's...
Welcome, everybody, on YouTube, and if you're listening only as well, if you are watching here on YouTube, be a friend, and go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and if you are listening only, Paul, how can they help the show?
Well, you're rating, you're reviewing, you're subscribing on your preferred podcast platform of choice. You're feeding the algorithm. That's what you're doing.
The algorithm, evidently, is everything. So if you don't feed it,
yes, exactly. That we get lost in the ethos if you don't. So it's really important that you do.
That's true. You can also help us support the show, say thank you. Patreon is one way to do that. We appreciate anybody who joins. A few new folks came in just the last couple of weeks. Hello, new friends. How are you? Thank you for joining. Great Discord community over there. There's a giveaway every single month. This month's giveaway is the Ed Record Store Day thingy. I've got it right here, Paul. It's coming.
He's digging. He's shuffling. He's searching. There it is.
There it is. So this is the Patreon giveaway for the month of May. So if you like this, consider joining Patreon. Otherwise, you can go to the pod shop. There's a QR code on the screen right now, link below in the description of the video or podcast. This is a shirt you could buy. This is a mug.
It's a beaut, Jason.
It's a beaut, Jason. So if you've bought anything in the past or you're thinking about doing it, really do appreciate it. It helps us do more stuff for you out there. A way that you can help others that's actually more important to us is by scanning the QR code on your screen right now. Or there's a link in the description and there's a link in our bio of our Instagram that helps the JED Foundation, our May fundraiser, Paul. They work really, really hard to strengthen mental health for teenagers and young adults around the country. Mental health struggles are real, right? Anxiety.
Very much so.
Even suicidal thoughts. So they do a great job of assisting people who need that kind of mental health help.
May is Mental Health Awareness Month. This is the time to do it.
There you go. Hey, listen, if you want to donate $5 or more, we've got a tiny little thank you for doing so. Paul, do you have them nearby? Do you have them ready?
I always have them nearby. Are you kidding me?
Why do I ask? Why do I ask?
Don't stop.
So many of them. For those of you who are taking a sip at the moment that Paul just threw 85 stickers across his room, here it is in slow motion. Here's one. That's the current logo. You got the OG logo. You've got the new logo in pin form, little button guy, and then you got the new guitar pick.
It's so much cooler than this guitar pick, isn't it?
That one's empty. This one's got something on the back and the front.
That's the point.
So that's a little thank you from us for supporting the JED Foundation here in the month of May. And if you donate the most money, you will get a copy of the new binaural Blu-ray. So it's been remixed in Dolby Atmos. It's on Blu-ray. You could have it if you're the greatest donator to the JED Foundation. And we thank you for all of your support across the spectrum of the things that you could support. So thank you. Hell of a conversation today, Paul.
Very excited about this one.
This gentleman just got off the road with Pearl Jam. He leads his band called Dead Pioneers. He's a hell of a guy. He's got a lot of stories and a lot of great insight into... I have blind spots. I think a lot of people have blind spots. We're all learning together. It's all good stuff.
And you know what? If you saw Pearl Jam on a couple of these recent stops, You might have been one of the ones cheering for this band. You might have been one of the ones booing for this band. I don't know. Either way, more incentive to know the man. So please stick around. This was a lot of fun. We learned a lot, and I think that you will too.
Gregg Deal, lead singer of Dead Pioneers, is next. The Dead Pioneers just released their second full-length record, Post-American, and wrapped up a 4-show supporting run of Pearl Jam. The infectious, unapologetic, and provocative brand of punk rock is meant to make the listener think, and in many cases, come to terms with the undertaught but very real history of Native people in the United States. In short, Dead Pioneers will force you to pay attention in a blunt, powerful way, and in the process, you might dance along to it. Joining us today is a graphic artist, activist, Native American, and the lead singer of the Dead Pioneers. Welcome, Gregg Deal.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on, Greg.
I love that.
No, I honestly have been paying attention to your recaps after shows. So, no, I'm stoked to be here.
Awesome. First off, speaking of the shows, happy anniversary.
Thank you. Yeah.
26 years?
Well, 26 of the longest years of her life, for sure. Yeah.
And it was on the same day as the last day you guys played with Pearl Jam.
Yeah, May 1st. Well, you know, in 26 years, we've never done anything. Like either we're broke or we got a million kids or something's in the way. So we've never really properly celebrated. And Pearl Jam is my wife's favorite band, one of her all-time favorite bands. And so I got to sort of make up for 26 years of not doing much. So,
well, kudos to you, Meg, for putting up with it and finally singing Pearl Jam. How about that? Yeah. Up close and personal, too.
The return on that investment, huh?
I don't know how I'm going to outdo it.
I mean,
she's cashing out now.
I don't know what you do. But we'll talk a little bit more about the Pearl Jam tour in a little bit. I want to talk about Dead Pioneers out of the gate here. So let's just dive in. You were born to a white father, Native mother, right? The first song that you and the band ever wrote called Bad Indian. Probably your most popular song, right?
Yeah.
Considering that context, can you explain what that means to the new listeners of the band and why that was the first statement that you wanted to make with this band?
I don't think it was that quite that calculated. I've been writing for a long time and a lot of spoken word pieces, and at the point that we made that, I was kind of we were trying to figure out what to do. Like, I had started a sort of a one-man show storytelling piece called the Punk Pan Indian Romantic Comedy, which was about how I grew up. It was about my relationship with my father, who passed in 2015, and my relationship with music and specifically just punk rock. And I got a grant to expand that and to give me an opportunity to create original music. And I was partnered with a group in Fort Collins called the Music District. And that's where I met Shane and Josh. And as that was happening, COVID lockdown happened. And so, you know, it's like impossible to do anything through, you know, Zoom or remotely. So it wasn't until October 2021, I was at a residency in Florida in New Smyrna Beach. And I was a mentor to 6 visual artists. And there was a poet who was a mentor to 6 poets, and a musician that was a mentor to 6 musicians. And one of the musicians was Lee Tesh, the lead guitarist for Algiers, an Atlanta band, who happened to just live down the street. He had moved down to Florida to be closer to family because of COVID. And he was there, and we just got to talking, and I was telling him, like, yeah, we're trying to make this thing, and it's supposed to be like spoken word with punk riffs and, you know, just something different, something exciting, and something audacious, to be honest, because, I mean, I'm in my 40s at this point. And And so I shared with him this piece I wrote the day before. It was called Bad Indian. And I was like, this might be a good starting point. The cadence of it really worked. And this campus we were on was really big. And so we went into a recording studio after a week or two. And we got in there. He worked out a bass riff. We put a distortion pedal on it. We pulled in one of the other musicians that was on campus to run drums and set up mics, press record, like ran through it a couple times, press record. And that was it. We had a 6-minute version that lived on Spotify for a little bit. And that was sort of like a jumping point, like a single that gave us everything we needed. I shared it with Josh and with Shane, and they were like, okay, like we know what we're doing now. Wrote a bunch of stuff and just sort of kept it going. But all of it was just sort of on a wing and a prayer. This is not, 5 guys that are trying to find relevance in the twilight of their careers. It's like kind of an art project, and that's turned into something else, of course. But the whole thing was around work that I've been doing. I mean, I've been a visual artist like for 20 years. I've had national recognition for, 12 or 13 of those years. And so it was all just sort of tied to this national career that I have as a visual artist that includes performance art and painting and murals and conceptual work. And I mean, you name it, I'm doing. I've done film work. And so why not music? Sure.
Yeah.
Now, Greg, branching out in that way, I mean, you talk about how, I guess you talk about how indigenous history is like mostly known by a larger audience, by a white audience through the lens, or through the lens. Let me rephrase this.
Of colonialism. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like through movies, sports mascots, books, photography, oftentimes created by white people, and that you have very little ownership over your own story. So presumably Dead Pioneers, do you feel like it's a vehicle to own part of those teachings?
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, and this is kind of where it gets a little bit dicey, right? Like I can't represent an entire people. I don't claim to represent an entire people. Bad Indian works because it's just mine. It's from my perspective, it's my story. And of course it's also articulating a shared experience. And it's an experience that has just enough nuance that if you don't know anything about it, you can kind of capture a little bit of that nuance in sort of the storytelling. But I mean, we're looking at something that is quickly becoming sort of a culmination of everything I've done. I mean, I've been at the forefront of a few activist things. Always been a proponent of representation, good representation, historical consideration, cultural appropriation. Things that sort of affect now that in my mind. Plays a role in diminishing indigenous voices and misinforming the American public, if not the Western, Western culture at large, about who and what we are. And so it's hard to get into the weeds of history and policy and the politics of indigenous people without understanding at a basic level that we exist. And that there's nuance to that existence that oftentimes is rooted in objectification and, racism and misunderstanding through a colonial lens that is predicated upon an effort to genocide an entire continent of people under the flag of colonialism. So
you need to justify.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I mean, listen, we're in a country that's supposed to be, and I know things are a little dicey at the moment, but we're in a country that's supposed to be about freedom of religion and freedom of expression and freedom of the choice to choose, what you believe and how you believe it. And nothing undermines that more than the relationship that the federal government of the United States has had with indigenous people. And so why make that public if it undermines this American dream, right? So it was illegal for Native people to have any sort of ceremonial practices or dress until an act of Congress in 1978. That's in my lifetime. So it was illegal until an act of Congress made it legal. And so that kind of stuff is really wild, and I think it undermines the narrative that I think most Americans are accustomed to.
So when you talk about, I mean, I have so many questions about Bad Indian, but one of them is, you had this music video. It's a lot of fun in a lot of ways. It's a little sardonic in some other ways too. Some of the scenes that are intercut in there, but there's a guy moshing in there that's wearing a hat that says "Make America Native Again," and it's in the iconic, MAGA style. We were texting about this a couple of weeks ago, and I asked you if you wear yours, and you said you don't because it's too much responsibility. Is that all tied into that? And can you elaborate on why there's so much responsibility to wear something like that?
Well, the responsibility is that, like, whether you like it or not, it's an iconic hat, and people see it the way that it was created and don't see alternatives to it. So they see you wearing it, they think that that's what it is. But when we shot that video, we did a call out to try to get as many folks to show up as possible, and Native folks showed up. I mean, from as far south as Albuquerque, and I'm not going to police people, like he was wearing his Make America Native Again. And I understand like the reaction to that. I'm not going to police that. This is a really strange thing to say, but because I do have, obviously a public persona, but I don't like to draw too much to myself in that way. Like, I like to have control over how I sort of kick against the pricks, as it were. And I understand the sarcasm of it. And I think I actually own one of those hats because I think it's funny. Mm-hmm. But it's funny to me as a keepsake, not as like, I don't need to go. I live in a pretty conservative area. I don't need to go to the grocery store wearing that thing. I'll end up in a fist fight with somebody, and I don't feel like doing that. So
now I have to ask, in your band, there are two indigenous people, guitarist Josh Rivera and yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, drummer Shane Swigart, bassist Lee Tesh, whom you mentioned earlier, and guitarist Abe Brennan are what you jokingly call DEI hires. So you've talked about how for someone like you or your kids who are mixed, white and native, that there can be criticism from both sides. Too Indian, not Indian enough, as you mentioned in the song that you just referenced, Bad Indian. Two questions here, two-parter. Can you talk about that double standard and what, if any, criticism that you receive for having three white guys in a band, considering the lyrical themes? And the second question is, do Lee, Abe, and Shane have to send a reply to an email answering 5 questions by the end of the week to ensure that they keep their jobs?
Well, so to the latter question, no, of course not. But no, this is actually really interesting. A good friend of mine, who actually just recently passed, and a hardcore activist, was just like, yeah, your band's great if it was all natives. I mean, I think that would be great. But what if I don't have access to that? I'm not interested in working with somebody just because they are who they are. I'm interested in working with people that understand what we're doing, that are good at what they do, and that are willing to stand with me while we do it. It's not even calling them allies at this point. They're like treaty partners, they're people that are just with me, and they trust me, and I trust them. And, I don't know. It's just different, but the fact is that most Native people are mixed. Not all of them, but most are, and oftentimes even the ones that are full blood are mixed with other tribes. And so, I mean, what does that mean? This idea of like how much Native you are or how much Native you're not, is really all sort of based on a eugenics perspective that was created with a system that's officially managed by the federal government, to decide who is and who is not Native, and who is and who isn't enough. So, for example, I'm half. My mom is full blood. I'm only considered on paper to be 1/8 because I'm only 1/8 of the tribe that I belong to. But I have every bloodline in my family is regional. Like all of the other tribes that are in my bloodline are in the same area. And so they're all related anyways. And so there's this weird way of looking at like who is and who isn't. And when the truth is that we're all very mixed, and I'm interested in working with other human beings, because that's the other thing, right? Because we're having a conversation about culture, which of course feeds into this culture war thing that we're kind of dealing with politically right now. We're not in a culture war. We're in a class war. I have more in common with a white dude who's poor than I do with a brown dude who's a multi-billionaire. Like, it doesn't, not that there's a lot of black billionaires, but there's like something inherently lost in not realizing that there's strength together. And these guys are killer musicians. And before DEI hires, they were called race traders. So we're just having and honestly, listen, people have been making fun of Native people for a long time and making fun of Mexicans for a long time. I feel like Turnabout's fair play, and we're just goofing around, and those guys are on board. I'll be honest with you. Abe Brennan is the one who came up with those things. He's like, hey, you should call us race traders. Hey, you should call us DEI hires. So I like this guy. He's a good dude.
So when you think about, a song like Bad Indian, for example, and that's your voice only. You're not speaking for anybody else. That's how you feel about your situation. Presumably you've had people come up to you and say, hey, I've had the same experience. What does it feel like to be able to see somebody go, shit, it's the same. There's a bunch of mirrors out there, even though I've written it for myself. What does that feel like for you?
It's pretty commonplace. I mean, I don't know, as an artist, as somebody who's, talked out loud, I have a couple TED Talks. I mean, it's not uncommon for people to say that to me. I accept the responsibility of that, and that's what it is. It's not the goal, but I understand that, people are having shared experiences, and I want to respect that. After my very first performance art piece, which is called The Last American Indian on Earth, and that was kind of what landed me on a national map, I started getting a lot of emails, mostly from young people, saying that they really like this piece and it meant a lot to them, and because it's about stereotype and it's about representation and it's about how much non-Native people don't know about us and what's real and what isn't. And I took it to my wife, and I was just like, I'm getting all these emails, and this is not something I expected. And she just reminded me, even as a white woman, she's just like, you have a responsibility to that. You have a responsibility to everybody. Answer every email, always be available, and respect people and carry those stories with you everywhere I go. And that's a Native thing. That is a Native thing to do. And it was a good reminder for my non-Native wife to remind me that that's what we're supposed to do. So I carry that with me. I take it very seriously. It feels like a heavy responsibility, but one that I've become accustomed to as much as one can.
I think wives reminding us of what we're meant to do is just, that's kind of ubiquitous at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
Gregg, you told KEXP that you wrote your first record, 2023 self-titled, in 1 day, and you recorded it in 2. And then you wrote the new record, Post-American, 2.5 days, recorded it in 4. You joked that it was because you were broke, but it reminds me of a relevant example for our core audience, at least, where Mike McCready tends to just vibe on his guitar solos, and then it's either the first or second take, or it's not going to feel right to him. So a little bit of that for you guys as well. Like, how much does the attitude of punk rock inform that, if at all?
I mean, like, the ethos of my work is kind of living in that punk rock space. And I think that, I don't know how I convince the guys of this, because like Abe is a fiddler. He likes to mess around with his stuff. He likes to write and do things and mess with it until it sometimes can become unrecognizable. And I don't know how much the other guys do that. I've just seen Abe do that. And, but I kind of treat it just like, hey, like, we got this, it's good enough. We flush it out when we record it, and kind of fine tune it when we record it. I think it's about hitting hard and fast. I mean, if I told you how many times we've actually performed live, that might be shocking, because it's in the 20s. It's not like we've just been able to kind of get in and just do the things that we do. It's not uncommon for me to be like, hey, we should do this, and like throw something in last minute, and we just work it out and make it work. My artwork's treated the same way. I just don't mess with things. I just want the truest thing, and then we do it and we walk away. But yeah, from a pragmatic point of view, money is also an issue because it's expensive to record, and the record label only handles so much, and then we're on the hook for the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want to read some lyrics from Post American because, like I said at the top, they are provocative. From the title track, taxes pay for war while we succumb just to make middle-class slums criminalize being broke. Yeah, we chalk it up to being woke. And from Working Class Warfare, say you earn a living, earn the right to live, dismantle social class, a pound of flesh we give. It's capitalism you see, and it doesn't work for me. It collapses all around us, and wouldn't you agree? Freedom shouldn't have to have a fee. Now, you mentioned colonizer native relationship. That's kind of a lot of what your music speaks to, and I think rightly so. And you make salient points about American exceptionalism and the culture war across class, like you said, and the political divides. Pardon me. And for example, you have a song about toxic masculinity with Love Language as well. There seems to be more tracks on this record that apply to a greater swath of people, maybe to your point about having more in common with the poor person, regardless of the color or nationality or ethnicity or whatever you want to call it. Was it intentional to do that on this record? And what do you think it says about the country that we are sharing more grievances than ever before?
Yeah. No, it was on purpose. We wrote this last summer. We weren't aware that we were going to write something that would somehow be more politically and socially relevant because that happened. Because we wrote it last summer, just kind of in the middle of, political campaigns and things being said. And it just, in fact, I think on our third or fourth day was that, assassination attempt on Trump.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, there was a line in Post American that said, it's bougie politicians with open hands, giant toddlers with demands. The original line was wispy hair, half an ear, with open hands, giant toddlers with demand. I think, but we wanted to make something a little less topical. It was like more general, so that it could live, past this moment. But I think everything is connected. If we talk about toxic masculinity, I can draw a line specifically to how that affects the issue of missing and murdered indigenous relatives, and how Native women are 10 times more likely to face some type of sexual assault than any other racial group in the United States. If I'm talking about, the politics of what's going on right now, being broke, Native people are among the poorest in the country. And so when things affect poor people, when things affect working class people, it affects all of us. And it really affects people that live on the reservation as well. And so that's connected to it as well. All of these things are connected in some way, but they are meant to have a universal appeal as we are moving into this place where it's becoming increasingly obvious that there's a significant difference between the richest rich and the poorest poor, and how it's affecting the working class, and so that's important. But yeah, no, I feel like that you can't talk about Native rights. You can't say no one is illegal on stolen land. You can't say any of those things without it actually applying to the general consensus of those types of issues as well as to the specific ones. So I wanted to create something that we have specifics, like, Mythical Cowboy is very specific. Caucasity is very specific. But Working Class Warfare applies to everybody that is just working for a living. That line, say you earn a living, earn the right to live, is specifically meant to point out that to say that I have to earn a living implies that I don't have the right to live. And so that's what all that stuff is there for. And that affects all of us because, like I say in, Bad Indian, while Native, I am also having an American experience, which means I'm experiencing the same things as you.
Yeah. That's a really good point. You make a salient point there. I want to ask you a little bit about Jeff. Our favorite bassist is a big advocate and an ally for the Native American community. Jeff Ament has been helping indigenous communities in part by building these skate parks with his nonprofit Montana Pool Service for years, right? So tell us a little bit about, this connection with Jeff, how it started, how it came that he invited you to open for Pearl Jam this spring.
Well, he bought work from me. That's how we first met. He reached out. And I sold some paintings to him. He found out about me through a gentleman named Walt Poirier, who is an Oglala Lakota Native person who runs a program that's similar to Jeff's Montana Pool Service, where they're trying to build skate parks on or near reservations in South Dakota. And so all the connections are there. But he bought a piece from me. Specifically for Smitty as a gift. And then we connected, and then he said he wanted me to do a board for him, and I did. And so we just had like these little connections, and along the way, came to understand his musical tastes and really appreciate his musical tastes. One of his favorite bands is SSD, and they're just this great, straight edge hardcore band from Boston, if I remember right. And I was surprised because I know Pearl Jam's music, and that I can see where those influences are. You can see where punk rock influences exist within grunge overall. But I don't know why I was surprised, but I was surprised, and pleasantly so. So that was before COVID, and then when we cut the first record, so I had vinyl in hand, I think in the fall of 2023. I just sent one to him, and I made it clear. I was like, I don't want anything from you. I just thought you would appreciate this because I know what kind of music he listens to. And he liked it, and he didn't make a big deal about it. And, and he doesn't owe me anything either. I mean, that's an important point. Like, I at no point believed that, well, Jeff bought a piece for me, so we have to be best friends now. And, it wasn't like that. And I was stoked to be able to do something for, Montana Pool Service, a very small something, but still stoked to do that. And learning about what they were doing there. When Pearl Jam came through a few years ago, they came through Denver, and my wife begged me to just send him a message and just be like, can we get tickets? And so I did. And he was just awesome. He's like, of course. And he hooked us up, and I brought my roommate from when my wife and I met, who's a huge Pearl Jam fan in the 10 Club, the whole 9 yards. He brought his roommate, and then I brought Shane, and Shane brought a friend. So we had 6 tickets, and the seats were great. I wore my Montana Pool Service hat, and my wife was like, don't wear that hat, because they're all in like funny colors, and she just was not feeling the colors. But I wore it, and then next thing I know, I'm just like in this group of people that are all wearing Montana Pool Service hats, and we're all like, hey, like that's, it was really cool. and listen, I've always, those first 2 records for Pearl Jam, which is I think the case for most people, really important and impactful. And I've always respected Pearl Jam, but, never understood why my old roommate was like such a hardcore fan until that show. When I saw the way that Eddie just sort of interacts with people, and I was just like, holy shit, man. Like, I understand why fans are so rabid about this band, because they play a great live show and they're just incredibly generous. And so I was stoked about that. Well, this is after COVID, right? So we were going to go backstage. It was the last show of that run. And for whatever reason, security stopped every single one of us, family and friends, from going backstage and meeting and hanging out with the band. And I found out later, Jeff said they had a huge spread and nobody showed up. And then we were just crushed, because we were like, we get to meet Pearl Jam, and I get to hang out with Jeff finally. And so it didn't happen. But I guess it would have been like later that year. He was doing the pig roast for Montana Pool Service in Big Sandy, his hometown. And he's like, hey, he hit me up just randomly. He's like, hey, I want Dead Pioneers to play the pig roast. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I'll take care of everything. And like, if you guys are available, we'd love to have you down. And of course I'm like, okay, I mean, do you want like, who are we opening for? And he's like, no, you're the headliner. I'm like, you're Jeff Ament, right? Like, you don't need me to be your headliner. And he's like, no, I want you to come down. He's like, it's going to be awesome. Cause he had heard the new record at this point. Cause I had shared like the new record with him. And they're the town's mascot is the home of the Pioneers. He's like, this will be hilarious. And we show up. And it's in the middle of nowhere. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. It's like one street, you would miss it. Like, that's a funny thing about the Montana Pool Service. I don't know if you guys realize this. Some of the best skate parks in the world are in the middle of nowhere in Montana. And it's just wild. So we find the skate park in the town, and freaking Lance Mountain is there. And Ray Barbie is there. Like, all these old skaters that I grew up hearing are like all hanging out at this thing. And we played in, there's a dive bar in town called Peps. And that's where we played. There's animal heads hanging on the walls. There's like beer neon signs. I mean, it's a bar. And
is there hay on the ground inside?
No, hay, but the wooden bar stools and and the bar, like it's a bar. Yeah. And there's a bowling alley attached to it that's not really, I don't know if it's working or not, but yeah, it was the strangest thing. And of course Jeff's hanging out and he's talking and he's just really generous with his time, and he's just such a good down to earth guy. And we played and it was wild and we laughed, and I don't know if I said it or if it was maybe Josh when we were driving back to the airport, and it was like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if that was like an audition to play for Pearl Jam? Ha 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 ha. Like
he put it in the ethos.
Yeah. Yeah. It happened. So we got a call later that invited us to open for Pearl Jam. And of course you say yes. And then after you say yes, I'm just like, I don't know if Pearl Jam fans are going to like us, because it's such a universally loved band. So you're going to get all kinds of people from all walks of life and all kinds of different political beliefs. And we're not a subtle band. But Jeff was down with it, and he was like, yeah, no, this will be rad and a good time. So, so just this weird sort of long over the course of several years, building a relationship with Jeff, and just really appreciating just how kind he is and generous he is.
Well, so let's fast forward then to those 4 days you guys just did: Hollywood, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia. And I want to know, you're talking about you don't know what you're going to get out of this crowd, and especially playing in southern states. I know a lot of people travel to see Pearl Jam. So, there's generally going to be people. I know tons of people out here in Los Angeles flew out for those shows. Friends in Austin, Texas flew out for those shows. But you're still in Florida and you're still in Georgia. And so
100%.
We were talking a little bit a little while ago, and I was like, is this true? Or was there a little booing action happening in Florida? And you're like, yeah. So, but that aside, what was the general vibe of the fans? How did the reaction go?
Absolutely amazing. That first show was the hardest because you're just not sure. This is the largest stage we've ever been on. We're in front of 7,000 people, and you're separated from the group. I mean, you're like 15, 20 feet away, and in the stage, because Pearl Jam stage, it's their stage. They own it. And but they added a new addition to it that sort of juts out in the middle. And they were like, yeah, you can't stand on that. Like, I have to stay in the area that we're at. And so we're just kind of on an island. And that first show, it was actually really interesting. Little small fact. I don't get scared or nervous about anything. And so I've done, I've talked in front of 7,000 people before. It's all good. Like, I can do it. But there was so much uncertainty going into this. And I think part of it too was like, we just have to be unapologetic, but I don't know how anybody's going to take it. And I felt really disconnected on that first show, and discombobulated and maybe a little bit stressed. We did fine. I was there. You can't tell that I had any of those thoughts or feelings, But I talked to a good friend of mine, and he's like, I know you're not accustomed to it, but what you felt is nerves. It's like what us normal people feel. Like that I was just stressed, I was just really stressed. And because I think a lot of it had to do with just sort of the uncertainty of like how we were going to be received. So couldn't hear anything. I was using in-ear monitors, which are also plugging my ears. So unless you're talking into the microphone, I can't really hear you, not specifically. Of course, I can hear people cheering, but like if you're yelling obscenities at me, I can't hear you. And as it turns out, there was a gentleman stage left who was yelling obscenities at us. He was screaming, fuck you, and like on and on and on as much as he could. And the stage guys let us know that was happening like the next day. And he was so angry, this guy. And then like once that happened, I was like, oh, okay. Like people were cheering and people were happy. And I was just like, that's cool. And it becomes funny, right? Because you're starting to build a relationship with people because nobody's there to see me. They're there to see Pearl Jam. And so we recognize that. We said that. I say that out loud and just say, we appreciate you giving us any energy that you brought for Pearl Jam. We realize that we're in a privileged position to be standing here. So we appreciate you being here. Somebody yelled, get a job on the second one. That's a classic heckle, by the way. And then we got a little bit of hate mail. There was a woman that said, who left a comment on one of our posts on Instagram and said, you were the worst opener for Pearl Jam ever. What the fuck? Which I was like, that's really funny.
We're number one.
But we got this message from this guy. Shout out to Rick. And he said, you guys are effing, he said an F slur of the gay persuasion. And he said, please kill yourself. I like the pleading. And said, he said, you guys are fucking homo, which I feel like feels like a state of being. Cause he didn't say you are a homo. He said, you are homo. Which I thought was hilarious. But the last line in his message was an absolute gem because as aggressive as everything was up to that point, he said, you were literally the worst part of my day. And
oh man, so that's a compliment.
I know we're going to make a t-shirt that says this.
What this is?
It takes a special talent to live that rent free in someone's head.
Honestly,
it's amazing.
And what's even funnier too is like you're not just like making some bullshit up. Like I'm teaching you history, my friend, and you don't like it.
Yeah,
but tough shit, buddy. And like it's like you reading mean tweets, like from Jimmy Kimmel's show. It's like, what do they have to say today? Like,
yeah. Well, and honestly, like I'm grateful to Rick and his fellow haters because I realized that those are just three people and there was hundreds that were cheering us on and a lot of the true Club 10 members were just really on our side. And it was really, really humbling and overwhelming. And I was super grateful for that. But it also gave me confidence, right? It's just like, well, we are what we are. And, love us or hate us, you're thinking about us. And I would rather be considered than ignored. So that's okay. And by the end of by the last show, because the third show in Atlanta, there was a guy, you're going to love this story. There was a guy on the third show who was standing in the general admission area, and he was flipping us off. And I called him out. I saw him and I was like, I see you, sir. I see your finger. You're very proud. I don't know what that is. Is that your IQ? I don't know what that is, but listen, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And everybody started booing him. And that was kind of funny. Well, Josh's wife was standing behind him watching our set and watched his girlfriend break up with him in real time because of how he was acting. And as she's storming off, he's screaming, "What did you expect? I voted for Trump." It's like, we're out here doing God's work. So
you are.
At the very least, it's very funny to me. And we didn't see him the rest of the night. But on the last night, I made a statement. We had so much love on that last night. It was really, really incredible. And I said, thank you guys for being here. We appreciate you. We appreciate your energy and your love, from Pearl Jam fans. And listen, for those of you that didn't like this, go get a beer, take the edge off. Everything's going to be okay. And I think that speaks to something that we're missing right now, which is that you can say words and you can just leave or turn off the TV, or like, you don't have to go out of your way to make your opinion known. It's okay. And yeah, it ends up kind of being fun anyways.
It's like we teach kids. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If we're not checking all three of those things off, why are we saying it? There was a lot of love. Now, some of that love got directed to Jeff, because near the end of your final opening performance, you gifted Jeff a necklace. Kind of curious, what was that made of? What's the significance?
It's a beaded necklace. I might have one of them sitting here, actually. But it's a beaded necklace that is meant to... There's not a lot of significance to it. Sometimes beaded necklaces are just necklaces that, like, as Native people, we just, you want to look good and you want to have like these embellishments that just sort of represent who and what you are. And in the statement to Jeff, it's like, this is part of my set of things, but stuff like that's not meant to be kept. It's meant to be given away. And who better to give it away to than somebody who gave us a chance, and on a stage that I don't know if we had any business on. I mean, now I think we had business being on there, but at the time, like, it's a chance. But it was just meant to be sort of giving him something in a moment. But it also gives an opportunity for non-Native people to see something that we as Native people do pretty frequently and commonly. And it's all good and it's all love. And Jeff played with us the last day in Florida, and then he played with us again the last day in Atlanta. And Eddie was actually on the side stage. He watched our whole set, and nice. I had no idea until afterwards. But
if you would have known beforehand, would that have changed how you performed at all?
More nerves, Greg. Okay.
No, it just, my wife intimidates me more than
that's fair.
Does.
How did Jeff playing the song Dead Pioneers, right? That's a song that he played with you guys?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, it's got just that killer bass line in the beginning, and just every bass player I know that has played that song loves that song because it's just fun. And if you look at the images of Jeff playing, he just looks like a kid in a candy store. He just looks like he's having a good time. And so, that one made the most sense. And it's the second to last song. So, a little bit of validation, like it's all good. It's all fun. And he's such a professional. Like, we played it in Florida, and then he just went through it once. He's like, okay, I'm good. And then never practiced with us again. He just came out and did it. So it was awesome.
Oh man. Are there any Pearl Jam songs that you would ever want to like participate in or play in any way?
Yeah. You know what? That's such a good question. Because there is, I'm talking to the guys right now. So we're not, nothing is set in stone. But Mind Your Manners is a great song. Like, it has nice. That sort of punk inflection. Obviously, McCready has more of a metal background than a punk background, but Jeff really helped inform that. And I think with just a little bit of twisting, that song could be about boarding schools, because it's very much about religious institutions and everything else. And boarding schools were run by religious institutions. So I think just a little bit of twisting, it could be about boarding schools. And I think Dead Pioneers could have a really good time with that song. So cool. I talked to Shane about it, who's a big Pearl Jam fan. I just ran it past Josh. So it's not set in stone, but like on the third record, if I could just have one cover, I think I'd like to do that song.
Well, if I may make one suggestion.
Sure.
What if Record Store Day is a thing. So what if you did a remastered cut of the 6-minute Bad Indian, and on the B side was Mind Your Manners?
I mean, maybe. So the 6 minute, like we pulled the 6 minute version down. So
I know you did.
We're holding on to it, just trying to wait to see what happens with that. But I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. We got a couple things in the pipelines. We have there's a Black Flag song called White Minority, and it's about Californians being afraid of becoming the minority in their own state. It was written in the 80s. And when Dez sang that, he sang it as a we. He's like, we are a white minority. And so when I sing it, I'm pointing at people saying you are. It's so confrontational, but it's really funny. But it's such a classic Black Flag song. So that one's in our quiver. We play it live. We've played it live for about a year now, and it's a good one. So yeah, we got a few things in there, but I don't know. There's a big part of me looking at this experience that feels like I really want to do a Pearl Jam song at the very least as an homage. And I think Mind Your Manners is a good song, and it's pretty fast too.
It is.
Good call.
All right. So I can't speak for Paul, but I've told you before that I think my knowledge of the Native American culture is limited. I think I have blind spots, and you have said before that there are 573 federally recognized tribes, and obviously way more than that speak well over 300 languages, and your music addresses a lot of these blind spots. What do you think is the biggest collective blind spot that white Americans need to address? And maybe what's the most efficient way that we could do it, and how does music help?
I think education and education. I think the answer is the biggest blind spot is education, and the biggest solution to that is education. The kind of going back to what I said before about sort of our existence undermining, a narrative that's very important to the United States. Yeah, I mean, it's led to, I think the statistic is 40% of Americans believe that Native people don't exist anymore, that they're completely extinct. That happens in very small and big ways. Big ways of just outright whitewashing or omitting, in small ways in putting certain people ahead of others, like Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator. Like, we all know who he is. We all know what he did. He also signed off on the largest mass hanging in American history. Was 38 Dakota men, and then ended up hanging 2 more the next day. And if you know the story, the original story was it was going to be 400 Dakota men, and they whittled it down to 38. And the reason why it happened is because Natives were being pushed onto what we now call reservations, but at the time could have been considered prisoner of war camps. And they were under armed military guard. And in that grouping, there was an Indian agent, a liaison to the federal government. So when they signed a treaty that said, hey, the federal government's going to take care of you for this amount of time, and then we're going to give you all the resources to learn how to farm and education and all those other things. And so that Indian agent was in charge of getting provisions to Native people because they weren't allowed to leave the reservation, hence that old saying, off the reservation. And they weren't allowed to hunt. They weren't allowed to do anything. But Indian agents were notoriously greedy and corrupt. And so they would take those provisions, they would oftentimes sell them or use them for themselves to try to make a buck off of, and not give the food to Native people. And in the case of the Dakota people, they were starving. It was the middle of winter and they were starving. And so all the men took up arms, they snuck off the reservation, and they went on raiding parties, and nearby settlements, people died in the process. Is that the fault of the Native people? Like, no, it's actually the fault of the Indian agent. And you could probably cast that net farther than just the Indian agent as well. But what ends up happening is a bunch of people die, and they capture them, and then they decide they need to make an example of them, when the genesis of the problem was not with the natives. It was with the people who were given rights to sort of steward over them. And when you omit that information, that's not to demonize Lincoln, but it's to give context to that time period and the type of person that Lincoln was. The same week that the Emancipation Proclamation was to be enacted is the same week he signed off on the largest mass hanging in United States history of Native people. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because it doesn't make him this sort of deified, former president. It makes him a man of the time that did some terrible things that reflects on what that relationship between non-Native people, particularly white colonial settlers, and Native people really was. And so when we omit that information, whether you realize it or not, you're giving importance to that. You're saying that this person is important and this person isn't. Like, you know who Columbus is, right? Mm-hmm. Do you know the name of the people that he came into contact with?
You're talking about the natives that he came in contact with?
Yeah.
Like the tribe?
You don't know the name.
No.
Yeah. But you don't know that because it's not important. And so placing importance on those things ultimately ends up feeding into our systemic understanding of who's important and who's not. And Native people are just fed into a place of not being important. And it's just simple omission can actually set that up and allow it to exist for hundreds of years. It's wild.
Is there are there like a handful of books that some person should go and read first to start them down the path of adding the complete context to our history?
There's some books that are worth looking at. Custer Died for Your Sins by Vine Deloria is a civil rights book that came out in, I believe, the early 70s, if I remember right. And Vine Deloria was a Lakota man that boldly wrote a book about like what it's like and what's happening. He wrote another one called God is Red, and it's just about religion and how it sort of affected Native people and what that looks like. Those books are still relevant today, unfortunately, and important. But then there's also like In the Spirit of Crazy Horse, which talks a little bit about Plains Indians, and then gets into a lot of what happened with the Wounded Knee standoff in the 70s that ultimately fed into Leonard Peltier being incarcerated for almost 50 years as a political prisoner who was just released by Biden as Biden was on his way out the door. Those histories are important, but like there's also like fictional books that give insight to culture, like There There by Tommy Orange is just an absolutely beautiful book. Also Google it. You can find a lot of, you just Google it. No, there's a lot of
I've been told that
information
Google
out there.
isn't always accurate though, Greg. I have to like make sure I'm filtering
read
my
the book
Google
review. You just read the book review. The Indigenous Peoples History of the United States is amazing. Sort of following the footsteps of the People's History. I forgot. I just totally blanked on his name. But there's those books that kind of reach into those historical spots that I think are interesting. But there's another one called The Inconvenient Indian, and it is a history book that reads like a novel. It's a pretty easy read, and it really touches on some stuff that's really wild, but really poignant still, and relevant.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. It's funny, Greg, when you start thinking about history, the perspective that it brings. I think about the Trail of Tears and the March of the Cherokee People. Andrew Jackson, who was the president at that time, I remember reading at one point in time that the judicial branch of the United States actually ruled it unconstitutional to move these people from one place to another, because essentially I think there was like less than a dozen men that signed this agreement to be relocated, half of which were drunk and half of which were coerced or blackmailed or bribed. And so these men were signing off on behalf of an entire group of people that they had no right to do so. And the loss of life and just this tragic march. And when it was ruled unconstitutional by a Supreme Court judge, Andrew Jackson's response was, I hear that ruling. Now let's see him enforce it. And it's just that flagrant disregard for rule of law. And we're living in a time where, it's never been more paramount to learn from that history, to prevent it from happening again in the future, where we have these laws and they exist for a reason. And these laws are meant to serve as checks and balances to keep us safe, but more importantly, to create civility. And when we find ourselves in a position where certain branches are flagrantly disregarding rule of law and then almost like mocking it publicly, like, yeah, well, whatever. It's there's a precedence for it. And if you read and learn that history, you can see just how damaging it is. And if you share these stories about it happening with people, and the reaction is, well, that's appalling. I can't believe that happened. And yet, when it happens again in front of us, there's this flippant kind of air of wanting to look away or not take it nearly as seriously as perhaps we should. So I'm really, really grateful for the chance to chat with you today, and I'm grateful for your music and for your art. And I hope you continue the direction and the path that you're on of shining a spotlight on something that is too easily forgotten and really should be held in much more, not only higher esteem, but more so on the forefront of what needs to be remembered, because we don't want to continue to find ourselves in these perpetual cycles of inhumane treatment of each other. So.
I appreciate that sincerely. And you're not wrong. I mean, just what you said on precedent alone. I mean, the Cherokee were not the only ones that went through that. The Muskogee went through that. My people went through that. We were forced to march up into Oregon. And that is a dangerous thing. And we are in that moment all over again right now, in so many ways. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Scary times, but no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Gregg, thank you for the music and the thoughts and shining spotlights on just some of the grievances that not only that your people have endured, but that some of us have all endured and are still enduring. So I think it's very important. Dead Pioneers, Post American is out now. Go buy a vinyl. It'll help you, I think. Gregg, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you again, Gregg Deal, for coming on this Dog and Pony Show. We appreciate you and your time and your insight and provocation by necessary education. Is that I'm being a little Dr. Seuss here, but I mean, the man spins the right yarn under the bed of punk rock, and he makes you take notice of history that you may not have learned in a fun rock and roll kind of way. I appreciate the cut of his jib. Thank you, Gregg.
Absolutely. I say that I appreciate when someone tries to do something a little bit different. And more importantly, when someone tries to do something a little bit different and it is shown through the lens of a voice in a history that is not often enough explored and shared, quite frankly. So I think it's hard to consider ourselves Americans without fully embracing and understanding a part of American history that existed before the establishment of the United States. So I highly encourage folks to listen to what Gregg has to say, to check out his art, to give some of your time to his voice. It's well worth the trip.
Absolutely. So like I said before, Dead Pioneers' new record, Post American, is out now. You can get a vinyl from deadpioneers.com, greggdeal.com too, to check out some of his art and some of his activism. So do that, won't you? You won't regret it. If you want to support this show, Patreon is one way to do that. I mentioned the giveaway for month of May is the Eddie Vedder Record Store Day 12-inch. Save it for later. And room at the top is on this bad boy. And if you want to buy a shirt or a mug, we've got the Pod Shop here I'm representing right now. We appreciate that. If you want to support the Jed Foundation, there are May fundraiser. They help young people specifically with mental health issues. It is the month of May. It is the Mental Health Awareness Month, right, Paul?
It sure is. Don't be a square. Support.
Oh my God. How did you do that? Well, you can also be a circle with this sticker and this button pin and this, well, I don't know what the hell you call this. It's a guitar pick. It's not any kind of shape other than guitar pick. But you can get all these things if you donate $5 or more to the Jetta Foundation. And the person that donates the most money to that organization will get the binaural Blu-ray. So send in your money. Come on. It's not like we're not tariffing this thing. It costs what it costs. $5 is $5. You know? Yeah. Look, listen, Paul, this is the episode to get real.
It is. It is the episode to get real. And I'm fully in support of helping those in need in honor of mental health awareness. So.
There you go. If you're on YouTube, still watching us, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Thank you very much in advance. Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you, madam. I just saw you click the button. That's so kind of you. Paul?
I'll click too.
Okay. What about those fine folks that are thinking and considering about doing something if they're listening only?
Well, if they're listening only, they're rating, they're reviewing, and they're subscribing to their preferred podcast platform of choice. They are feeding the algorithm. That's what they should be doing, and that's what we appreciate them doing.
All right, gang. We'll see you next week. And until we do, you've been listening to or watching
The State of Love and Trust.